Well, good morning, everybody, and welcome to another edition of CGS Live, Houdini Effects Special, or VFX Special, I should say. I don't just do Houdini, but predominantly. Hope everybody's got their coffee. It's probably not morning in most places, but it is morning here, and I have my coffee, and I'm ready to go. So I thought I would do some weird stuff in Houdini today because I like building. Oh, thank you, Robert. Let me just kill this. I don't think there's an echo, but here we go. How's that? I did turn it down because I thought it was a bit loud, but maybe not. Hello, Audrey. How you going? Welcome. Robert, you read my title or my thanks. You read my title and asked build strange things like the show or just weird stuff in general. Well, I was inspired by a video that I saw. Let me see if I can find it and bring it across. It was on LinkedIn actually, and it was a video about Stranger Things. It was about the rat explosion. I think I shared it on the CG Spectrum Slack or the Houdini channel. Let's see if I can find it again. Maybe I can find it on Slack. It was a very cool making of, and I thought it was a really good thing to kind of look at for people getting into VFX, because it sort of shows all of the processes that that a studio will take when creating a really complicated effect. Here we go, rodeo effects. Let's have a look at this. So I think you can all see this. The rat. Yeah, I sent it to you. So if we have a look at this, this is the kind of idea. It's probably, I don't know if this will play back terribly well, but this kind of exploding rat, and they did some practical stuff which is gross and kind of cool, but they also did this animation driven effect where, hey Rizwan, where they use an animation rig in Maya to drive the effect. And I'm probably not going to do this part. I'm going to focus more on the effects. Making the mustache, that's right. Maybe we'll put a little mustache on it at the end. But seeing this stuff is really, really cool. And all of this obviously looks awesome. And then you've got this kind of gross, slimy stuff that's left behind. So I'm not going to do this exactly, but just taking this as a kind of as inspiration, I thought I might just see what I can kind of come up with. I really like doing these kind of layered effects in Houdini, where you've got lots of different elements. So there's just lots and lots of different layers, and I don't know if I keep saying it on the stream, but it's something that I always say to my students at CG Spectrum, is that effects is all about layers. So it's not just one element. It's not just an RBD sim, for example. It's all the dust. It's all the grit. It's everything that you layer up to create that effect. It's not just one element. So that's kind of that's the way that I like working, just building things up to a nice level. So I don't really know what I'm gonna do here, but I think I'm just gonna start with a sphere, because that's a nice easy way to start. I'm just gonna build something, so I might go a few subdivisions. I'm just gonna raise this up. So I'm thinking what I'm gonna do is maybe just drop a whole bunch of spheres on the ground using RBDs to start with. So what I might do is fracture this. I'm having sound issues. What do you mean? Is it echoing? Or is it stuttery maybe? So let's see. Sound goes completely away every now and then. Oh, okay. Let me check my mic. It may just be that I'm moving away from my microphone. I don't know if that is possibly it. Let's just have a look at what microphone I have plugged in here. Stand by. Let's have a look. No, I have the correct microphone plugged in. Yeah, I don't know. Let me know if it keeps happening. I'll try and do something else. Voronoi fracture. So I'm just gonna do a simple kind of fracture effect here on this, and I don't want that many pieces. 100. Let's go 50. How's the audio? So I'm just gonna do something like that. It's probably all right. And I'm gonna drop this into just a SOP-based RBD solver. Can you use particles in Houdini? Yes, of course you can. And we can have a look at some particles in Houdini, Rizwan. Ah, thanks, Robert. Whoa, oops, I forgot to turn on the ground plane. Yeah, let me know if it keeps happening. I don't really know. I can't see anything wrong, but it could just be me moving in and out of my microphone. Okay, so there we go. We've got a simple fracture happening, and that's not particularly interesting at the moment. So I'm also going to pull out of this pink output, we've got constraints. So I'm going to pull out that and plug it into a constraint, RBD constraint properties. Yeah, look, I think particles are one of the things that Houdini does really well. It took me a while to get used to doing particles in Houdini, coming from 3ds Max, which was a bit more event-based. So I was used to triggering certain events happening at certain times. And Houdini kind of works a bit differently, although you can kind of work that way, but it uses more kind of groups, I guess, than events. There would be like some sort of trigger that would send it to a different event in 3ds Max, in pflow, which I really liked and I got used to. But I think Houdini's a great particle kind of tool. It's the basis for a lot of effects, although I'm probably not going to use it today. I don't know, we'll see. I might do some flip or something at the end, which is kind of like particles. So here we go. So I guess, I'm trying to create something a little bit blobby and springy feeling, but I'm not using vellum to do it. That's the key, I guess. I'm just using something different, just to give me a slightly different result. The reason I'm not using vellum is I find vellum can be difficult sometimes to get these sort of really soft body type behaviors. And also, this is just going to give me an odd kind of result, which isn't, perfectly squishy, and it has some lumps in it and it's a bit bumpy. So that's why I've chosen to use RBDs. And it's also really, really quick. So we got that happening. And then, so what I was thinking after that is so coming out of here, if I move this over so it pops up on this screen, you can see coming out of here, it comes out as polygons. It's not packed geometry. And what I could do then is point deform. I like using point deform. It's a great thing to use for this sort of stuff. So I can plug it in back up here to my sphere, my original sphere. And then rest point lattice would be this non-deforming fractured geometry. And then the deformed point lattice would be my RBD sim. And then I get a deforming sphere. So you can see I'm no longer looking at my RBD chunks anymore, but I am looking at my original sphere, and you can see how it sort of behaves a bit more like a soft body. Now, what's my favorite render engine? Hey Pierre, how's it going? Anonymous says, what's your favorite render engine? My favorite render engine in Houdini, I have to say Mantra, because I still really like Mantra. Because of the way it hooks into Houdini, it's the native renderer, so it works really well, and it's just very easy to set up. The problem with it is that it's incredibly slow, so there's always that issue, but I still prefer it over Redshift, say. Redshift would probably be my second favorite, but honestly, I don't have loads of experience with all the different renderers in Houdini. I haven't tried that many. I have tried V-Ray, which I didn't love. I found that was a little bit clunky as well. Redshift is the same. I feel it's a little bit clunky to set things up. It's very quick once you've set it up, but some limitations in the shaders and the way that you use custom attributes and stuff like that, it takes a bit longer to set up. So yeah, whilst I really like the render times and actually the quality of the render in Redshift is really nice, I still actually prefer rendering and setting up shaders and using all of the things that are native to Houdini. So that's the other thing with shaders in Redshift. You have to use the Redshift nodes, so you can't just use the regular VOPs that you are used to using in Houdini. And for volumes, I certainly find Redshift, whilst it can do volumes, it's incredibly painful. Yeah, it's painful to set up. Though, I have found ways of kind of dealing with that and sort of using it to create the results that I want. But yeah, it is a nightmare. And I really like to build my own shaders in Houdini, and that is something that I can't completely do in Redshift. So yeah, I still say Mantra. And I use Mantra in production. All the movies that I've worked on in Houdini have been using Mantra. So it is a good renderer. It's just really slow, unfortunately. I don't know if it's ever going to get better, but hopefully Karma or the GPU stuff they're doing in Houdini will become better, and hopefully, I hope, more integrated. One thing I don't like about Karma at the moment is that it exists in a completely different context, and you have to merge things into that context for it all to work. I find that kind of a pain as well. I just want to just render like I do with Mantra. I don't know. That just might be a familiarity thing. Usually, I don't like things that I haven't spent a lot of time with. But yeah, I've heard really good things about not Redshift, 3 to Light as well. 3 to Light sounds great. It sounds really quick. It sounds good for volumes. It sounds quite fast for volumes. Have I seen worked on Solaris? No, I have seen, that stuff, but no. I mean, this is the thing. The thing with like Solaris and a lot of that workflow is that working at a studio, you will probably not see that being used unless it's a very small studio. All that USD implementation and yeah, a lot of that, like even the PDG stuff, it is stuff that an existing studio, and certainly a big studio, will have already set up, and they've set it up for their needs and probably cross-platform as well. So you tend not to see some of those things get implemented at larger studios because they already have a solution for it. But for people working at home and for smaller studios that don't have a big pipeline or even a team to develop a pipeline, it is a great thing. But I haven't used it. I haven't had the need to. It's definitely something that I want to look into, even for just my own sort of home, work, because it will make things faster. But yeah, it's not something that I've had cause to use yet. Or, for going into a studio, it's sort of not something that I need to focus on as an effects artist. It's better for me to focus on, learning new techniques, how to do certain effects, and keeping my skills up. Have I heard of Puget Systems computers? Yeah, it rings a bell, but I actually don't know what that is. Tell me about it, Drawn Skull. Pierre says, I used 3 to Light for some projects recently. It's pretty fast, but there are still things lacking compared to Mantra for more advanced shading. Yeah, and I think that's going to be the same for a lot of the third-party renderers, just that the way that they hook into Houdini is never going to be as kind of good as the native renderer, as Houdini, as Mantra. So yeah, I think you will always find those kind of limitations with third-party renderers, no matter what it is. That's just a fact. Puget is just a company that makes crazy good workstations. Oh, okay, right. Yeah, I don't know. I haven't really. I'm not super up on hardware. I'm sure I've seen it, and that's why it's familiar. But yeah, I don't know. Maybe we can't get them in Australia. Oh, it's what you get on the Rookies Challenge, right? I see. Cool. Oh, nice. Yeah, look, I mean, there's lots of different workstations out there, workstation brands. There used to be one called Box, BOXX, which was really good, but really, really expensive. I'm a bit of a frugal shopper when it comes to computers. I just go for a mid-range computer, usually a gaming PC or something. Yeah, suits me fine. Although, you do have to make sure you have enough RAM, otherwise you might have a crash like I did in the previous stream or the one before, I can't remember. So yeah, I think, I usually just go for something that's sort of moderately priced. Good value, let's say. But sometimes that can be, it can be a bit of a pain if it's a bit slow. But as I was telling somebody the other week who was asking me about what computer they should choose, I do choose a mid-range computer and one that's not going to cost me, an arm and a leg, so I can spend that money on things that I really care about. I just buy a mid-range computer and I work to the limitations of the computer. You don't always have to have the top of the line, and when you go and work in a studio as well, you might not necessarily have the top of the line computer. Their workstations might be a little slow, or they might, it might just be a bit old. You get put on a dud computer, and you still have to do your work. So you kind of learn to work within the limitations of the computers that you're provided. It's just something I've kind of learnt over the years. This doesn't really bother me if I'm on a laptop or a workstation. I just find out what the boundaries are and then rein it in a little bit. They give you recommendations on what CPU, GPU, and how much RAM, depending on what you're going to use it for. Yeah, right. Well, that's good. Specialize in making PCs for certain programs. Right. Okay. Oh, cool. Well, that's good. I mean, that's better if they do kind of advise you on what you need. I think, for me, quite often a lot of people, when they say they're having problems in Houdini, they think that it's the GPU. Like, they think getting a better GPU is going to solve all their problems. But quite often that's not the case. A lot of the time you are using the CPU for a lot of simulation stuff. It's not all GPU. Like, this is not running on the GPU at the moment. This is all CPU. So rigid bodies and stuff like that is all CPU based. So no, I wasn't thinking about you, Robert, but it's a common thing that I hear from people, is that I'm gonna get this $5,000 GPU and all my problems will be solved. It is definitely not gonna improve everything. The PC I'm getting from them cost $4,500. Well, that's not too bad. It's a little bit above what I would spend, but what sort of specs has it got? So let's see. What am I doing here? I'm just scrubbing this endlessly. So I just subdivided this to make it a bit more detailed, and I'm going to try and use these chunks for something. I'm just not sure what. What I think I'll do here is, let's try subdividing these and see what happens. Let's see, I want to make them a bit smoother maybe. Let's see. Oh, it looks okay, although the normals are a bit kind of weird. Let's facet them. Pre-compute normals. There we go. So they look a bit kind of, weird now, a bit chunky and weird. I'm thinking what I might be able to do with these is put them inside. Although maybe they're sticking out a little bit. they are sticking out a little bit, but that kind of looks okay. I'm guessing you don't have to do anything with that computer. You just think what effects you want and it will telepathically. That's right. Get a quantum computer and just think what you want. That would be the day. Although might all be out of a job if that happens. So you can see here I've got these things sticking out, and it's starting to look kind of cool. You know, it's looking a little bit like there's some bones or something sticking out of this goo. But maybe I don't necessarily want these things sticking out. So what I'm thinking is I'm going to use a ray here, and I'm going to try and ray these bits. You see that? How they're poking up now into that area? So if I merge these back together now, it's not quite perfect. So let's try a little, we can scale that area as well to poke it out a little bit. Or what else could we do? Let's on here put a facet first to recalculate these normals. Pre-compute. And then we'll have a look at the ray. We might not have enough subdivisions on this thing as well, so we can always go back and just add more subdivisions here. Let's try that out. Facet, ray. No. It's always good to put a facet or a normal calculation after the ray as well, because that can sometimes screw things up. Oh, there we go. It's kind of doing it. Let me just change the scale a little bit. What did you do on that facet node? I just ticked on pre-compute normals, which, to be honest, the result actually... Oh, yeah, there we go. So we don't have point normals on our object. I never created them, and it doesn't have them by default on the sphere. It will just have vertex normals. So the ray uses point normals, or yeah, it might automatically use vertex normals. I don't know, but it's always good to have point normals, I feel. Better than vertex normals for a lot of these operations. So I just use the facet to calculate those point normals. There are lots of ways of doing that, but at this price, it better do your coffee and be made of gold. I've certainly heard of computers costing more than 4,500, but also I guess it depends what currency that's in. But I'm sure it will be great. You won't be left wanting, no doubt. If I could afford it, I probably would spend more, but I prefer to spend my money on guitars and amplifiers. Alright, there we go. So you can see now how we're getting those chunky shapes underneath our object because of that ray. So that's kind of cool. And then if we merge these, we've got these on top. So they're still like slightly coming through. So what I might do is put a peak down. And the peak is going to take these normal directions and just push this stuff out slightly. So if I put a little value in there, you can see how it pushes it out. And if you really push it, it gets kind of weird and a bit blobby. But then one thing you could do after that is put a smooth down to just smooth out some of that stuff. And then it will get kind of a bit weird. And then again, got a lot of facets going on here, but you can see how that fixes that normal issue that I've got there. So I do tend, when I'm doing this sort of stuff, I do tend to recalculate the normals. You make Houdini look so easy. Sorry, I know it's not. It certainly wasn't easy when I first started learning it. But yeah, look, it's just practice. You know, it's all just practice and recalling. You know, which one of these thousands of things can I choose to do the job that I want. But a lot of it, you know, is just I've done things before and I remember, you know, that, oh, this kind of combination of things worked for me once before. So, you know, not to say that I've done this exact effect before, but I've done lots of different effects in my time. So I have this kind of good memory bank of, you know, how to achieve certain results or how to fix certain problems. So it is unfortunately just very time consuming to practice at the start. It just it takes a long time. You just got to keep trying and keep plugging away, trying to solve problems and trying to create different interesting effects. I find this stuff is also a bit more, I guess, challenging or interesting than just doing RBD sims endlessly, you know. RBD sims are pretty easy when it comes down to it. The solver is doing a lot of the work for you. But creating these more kind of complex setups that really require some more complicated geometry sort of options or just different ways of thinking about solving problems. I find this stuff, you know, is a little bit more fun, especially when I get a shot like this at work where there's no kind of rules or the brief is a bit ambiguous. And it really requires some thought and some problem solving and just trying out a whole lot of different kind of methods until you get something that works. So yeah, this is kind of interesting. Now, I really liked the tumbling behavior that they were getting in their simulation, which was actually driven by some animation. But I'm wondering if we could add maybe some forces to this to drive this animation. So maybe a wind blowing this in a particular direction. Let's see, we're looking down the positive X this way. So let's go inside this RBD bullet solver, and we've got this force output where we can put pop forces. So if I just put a pop force in there, and maybe I'll put 1 in X, and let's see what happens. So it hits the ground, it freezes. And I've noticed with this RBD bullet solver, you see how they just completely freeze there and they stop moving? It's got this under advanced, I think, sleeping time, and the sleep seems to kick in super early. So if you set that to 0, you can see they still keep moving. So I'm going to, let's put this up to 10. Hit play, see what we get. Well, there we go. That's a little bit crazy, but let's put some logic into this. So I'm going to say if at p.y is less than 1, and we're going to take this parameter here. So it's not an attribute, actually, it's just force. Force equals, force times equals, no, let's see, force, yeah, let's do force.x equals 10. Close, and I'll set this to 0. So what this is going to do is that when this ball drops below this value here, this 1, that's that position. I might need to make that less. Then the force equals 10 is going to kick in. But before that, it's not going to do anything. So let's have a look. Ah, there we go. So let's play it. And there, off he goes. Have I seen this movie called Overlord? You just broke your Houdini trying to keep up with me. That's good, Robert. Have I seen a movie called Overlord? No, I haven't. I haven't. Is it recent? I haven't been keeping up with movies lately, but no, I haven't. Tell me about it, Drawn Skull. There we go. So we're getting some like kind of interesting creeping behavior happening. I'm thinking though, what we could also do in here is potentially use a sine function to pulse this motion. So it's like a bit more of a creeping motion. So let's try doing a sine function. So we'll do sine at frame. And that is only going to yield between -1 and 1. So I'm going to put that in a fit11 function. And that assumes that this input is between -1 and 1. And then I'm going to fit this between 0 and 10. So what that's going to do is create a sine wave running over frame. And it's actually going to be really slow at the moment. So I might multiply that by 24, make it faster. Well, let's just see what happens. We can also turn on the guide, and that will show us. Yeah, there we go. See how this is pulsing? It's pulsing too quick, so I was a bit too keen on my multiplication there. Let's do 5 times. Yeah, you see that? So let's take down. Still too fast. I guess maybe I was a bit crazy. And now I think because it's pulsing, the thing with force is that force is a sort of, it's a value that gets sort of accumulated over time and it increases over time. So if you're pulsing it and taking it away, sometimes it doesn't get enough to build up. So one thing we could try is just increasing this greater value to 50 so that we get a much larger, well, there we go, too much. Let's turn it down 20. So there we go. You can kind of see that pulsing. Let me turn the guide off. I can't tell if it's the guide that's a bit weird or it's just our motion. Yeah, it's a little bit odd. I'm thinking what I might do as well is just put a little downward force in this, just to sort of try and keep him to the ground a little more. Him, he's not a person, but I've given him make him feel like it's a real thing. There we go. So there's something interesting about it. It's not perfect, not exactly what I was going for, but let's try. I guess we could also divide this by 2, which will halve that pulsing and slow that right down. Well, there we go. That's kind of interesting, but it's a little bit jerky. Let's go 4. Turn that guide back on. Oh, the guide's underneath now. It's a little bit hard to see. It's like an action horror zombie movie. No, that I like action movies, but I've got to say I'm not a massive horror person. I don't mind zombie movies if they're not overly terrifying, but I had some bad experiences when I was a kid watching horror movies, and it kind of put me off horror movies forever, I think. Too many nightmares. With some soldiers trying to survive against diseased humans who get affected. Sounds great. Sounds like it would have some gross effects in it, which I do like. Yeah, I do like seeing that stuff. So I'm going to add some, let's say, friction to this, I think. I'll turn the bounce off, maybe on the bullet object as well, and I'll crank up the friction. Or I could also add drag. Let's add drag spin. See if that causes these things to rotate a little more. Might do. Yeah, maybe. There's some good rotation stuff happening there, the drag spin. Alright, let's have a look at what this looks like with the point deform. Black Sheep. Oh, I have seen bits of Black Sheep. I do like a kind of, the comedy style horror movie. I think they're quite good. And there's a lot, I quite like B grade, really, really obviously bad kind of horror movies. They're quite funny. Terrible effects, which are always very cringeworthy, but it's very funny. I don't know if you guys have seen a movie called, I think it's called Birdemic. That is just, wow. That is, the effects in that are incredibly bad, but it's pretty funny. Yeah, totally. Have a look up Birdemic. I think it's called Birdemic. Look it up on YouTube. Yeah, that's right. I'm pretty sure there's a scene where a guy's trying to like swat away this obviously 3D eagle with a coat hanger. It's hilarious. I would love to work on a movie like that, to be honest. Where it was just the budget was so low and nobody cared. I feel like I could add a lot to it. I have seen some of those low budget ones with some really cool VFX. There was a video I saw, I think it was like something like Super Anaconda or something. There was a video where somebody had built this amazing snake rig in Houdini for the movie, which looked really, really cool. All right, so this is looking weird, which is good. That's what I'm going for. It's looking kind of a bit gloopy, and I'm seeing bits of these kind of chunks poking through, which is kind of interesting as well. I think that might actually look kind of good. Now, let's start to kind of have a look at the rendering so we can sort of tell what is going on here. I might do a little flip book as well, because it's a little bit hard to see what this motion is doing. Let's have a look at this. So something like that. Just try and choose an interesting camera angle. There we go. Have him crawl off screen. So I'll set that as a camera. And I'm just going to put an environment light down. Pick something here. Overlord does have some great blood looking effects and sound effects too. Oh, that's cool. I'll have to look it up. See if it's something that I could watch without being terrified. All right, so I'm going to create an environment light, and I'm also going to create. Actually, no, that's fine. Yeah, I'll put a ground plane down as well, just to sit this on. So, grid, ground plane, and yeah, that'll do. Let's jump into Mantra. So I'll just may as well just hit render. I don't often use this, but it is handy for streams and tutorials because it's not on a separate window. I usually just use the render to end play button. One reason is that it saves each frame that you do, so I can see the progress that I've made in the shader. But this is handy. So there we go. Not particularly interesting at the moment. Although we can see some cool details there. So let's, first of all, what I'm going to do here is I'm going to put down a null for the, I don't know, what should we call this? Goo ball. Say out goo ball. Oops. And I will say out RVD chunks on here. The reason I'm doing this is so that I can split these things up for rendering. So instead of rendering this sphere, I'm going to create two separate geometry objects. And this just makes it easier for shading and separating things, rendering certain things, turning off lighting conditions for certain objects. It's just, it makes it a lot easier. So here's my goo ball. And I'll just duplicate that and call this one chunks. And then just grab the RVD chunks. So there we go. And now we can start assigning shaders. So I want to do some subsurface stuff on this. Yeah, I want to make it look kind of transparent and gooey. I find that doing subsurface on the principled shader is actually really tricky to dial in. So I don't use it. I haven't had great results trying to get that working. So I like to use the classic shader, which is the old shader that they had. And I find dialing in subsurface and even refractive stuff with this is a lot easier than the principled shader. So I prefer to use classic shader. So I'm going to put a classic shader on the goo ball first. I'm going to duplicate this and this one. So this one could be goo. This one could be chunks. Okay. And one of the things with subsurface stuff when you're working on it is that an environment light isn't going to give you a great subsurface result. Having a light from behind the object is going to have that light kind of come through. You know, you can see, I don't know if you can see it on the video, but if there's light behind my hand here, you'll see light kind of scattering through, and yeah, that's what makes it happen. But if there's light on the front, then you don't see that. So what I'm going to do is put a strong light behind the object, so, and behind the camera as well. So maybe off to the side like this. I'm just going to click a spotlight down. Have a look at that through the render view. There we go. So there's our spot. And let's now go, and I'm just going to turn off the goo for a second and focus on the chunks. So let's turn on subsurface, and single scattering works best. It's nice and quick, and it gives the best results for what I'm after. I'm just going to turn off reflection, and let's set the diffuse color to something kind of gross, skin tone. Hit render on that again. Also, with Mantra, I'm going to turn off progressive shading. Yeah, you can see with Mantra this isn't too bad at the moment, but I am going to set the pixel samples down to 1. so that it renders really, really quickly. It's very noisy, but you know, that's great. Good speed, 3 seconds. So let me just make sure that this has the, this doesn't have a material on it. That's the problem. Go to material, add chunks. Should see that color change now. Oh, there we go. And we're getting some subsurface happening. So let's now go to our subsurface and we'll play around with the color. So if I change that, there we go. And let's just turn off our environment light for a second as well. So we can just sort of see what that backlight is doing in terms of the subsurface effect. And you can see all this stuff here is not really getting much of that. So we can turn this up to increase the brightness of that effect. And you'll notice it's killing my ground plane in terms of the brightness as well. So I could just exclude that light from lighting the ground plane. And now you can see the light just affects my object. So if I turn my environment light back on again, let me just hit stop and render. Oh, let me just check this. So environment light, yeah, so that should be illuminating the ground plane. Well, that doesn't seem to be. Oh, there we go. This interactive renderer just sometimes doesn't update. So that's why I hit stop and render again to force that. Well, there's a bit of a disconnect now between the lighting, so I'll just turn this down a touch. There we go. And let's go back and just have a bit of a play. So scatter distance, if you take that down, obviously you'll get less scattering. If you put it up, you get much more, and it becomes a bit more, you know, much more transparent, I guess. You also have this reduced diffuse intensity, which is good to have on, but what it does is it actually works as a multiplier to set your base color, I think, pretty much to 0. So yeah, it just sort of switches your base color off. But you can see it sort of enhances the effect of the subsurface as well. So it is kind of a good thing to have on. I wish you had a control for it. And I started digging inside the shader to have a look at where that might be happening. I can show you that. Let's see if we can find it again. I think it might be actually inside the classic shader. So, you know, when I'm looking for things in these behemoth shaders, first of all, they're all labeled, or the backdrops are labeled, so you can kind of see emission, refraction, textures, coat reflection textures. But I can also see, if I have a look down the end here, that it's all going into this classic shader core. And if I have a look at the settings on the classic shader core, I can see a subsurface tab. So that tells me that there's probably the subsurface stuff that I want is inside here, not in any of these nodes. So now I need to right click, allow editing of contents on this, go inside, and we've got another behemoth of shader to dig through. But if we look, we can find opacity fall off. I think it's might be down here. Oh, refraction, reflection. One. Oh, where are you? Sometimes it's also in a like another subnet or something. Fake caustics, opacity fall off. I could use the find function, but I'm a bit lazy with the find. Oh, here we go, SSS. So if we go in here, let's have a look. Here's our physical SSS. So we don't have a multiply here for our multiply diffuse intensity or reduced diffuse intensity. So it must be somewhere else. And if we just keep looking, so follow this, trace it down. So that's actually outputting to CE. But let's follow this path here. There's a switch here. Where's that going off to? Mission, physical SSS. I feel like I found this the other day, but now I can't see it. There was actually like a little switch, which was switching to 0. Let's see if I can find it. SSS. Let's see. Or we could do reduce or diffuse. intensity. Yeah, I can't find it there. Let's have a look at these other SSS nodes. PBR, SSS, use PBR, SSS mode. Here we go. Oh, here it is. So this is in a different location. So SSS albedo, that's spelt wrong. Albedo estimate. So there's two SSS. I guess they're the same color, so you can kind of use that to figure things out. But here is this switch here, which I think, oh, let's see, SSS enable. I don't know, this is kind of, this is probably a little bit boring watching me search through all this stuff, but this is kind of what what I do. Oh, here it is. Here's the two-way switch. And the condition is reduce diffuse intensity. Yeah, totally, Robert. Very easy to navigate. When I have to open the find, then you know I'm in trouble. I don't know, I found it quite easy the other day, but yeah, I guess, you know, I just started in the wrong spot. I probably should have started with the diffuse. Maybe that makes more sense. But here is our SSS intensity multiplier. And here is this two-way switch, which is switching between this input, which is reducing the intensity. So that is actually just, I think it's just inverting the intensity of the SSS. So basically it'll be kind of 0. And then the other option is 1. And this is multiplying against diffuse. So if you come up here and follow this channel, this is the diffuse. So it's just basically multiplying it to 0. So what I would prefer is like some sort of promoted control on here, which either, you know, I guess, you know, I could do that. I could just do this where let's see, how would I do that? Let me just disconnect this whole thing and just on this multiply here, I'll just promote parameter and call this diffuse intensity multiplier. And then if I jump out, that is now on my classic shader core, I think, somewhere. Probably, oh, maybe not. Let's see, where would it have gone? Maybe all the way out the top. Let's see, maybe it did put it there. Oh, there it is. So now, if I set that to 1, there's my diffuse intensity of 1. Now if I set that to 0, that's the same result that I was getting with that checkbox, which is now, this checkbox now does nothing. So now I actually have a control where I can say, actually, I want 50% of that diffuse coming through, or I want 10%. That to me is much, you know, much better than having a like either or, which I can't control at all. So you can make shaders whatever you want. You know, you just have to kind of find the bit that's causing you problems and work out how to change it. So yeah, I don't know. I mean, I think this is probably okay. It kind of looks a bit weird, which is good. Perhaps the scatter distance shouldn't be so high, you know, for this internal stuff. Let's go and turn our goo ball on and we'll have a look at that. So we could do the same thing for the goo ball. We could have subsurface on it. So we could make this, let's go single scattering, scatter distance. We could take down, let's have a look at that. I'll just make the diffuse again, something a bit more gross in color. Okay, so let's start increasing that, see what we get. Kind of weird. These little bubbles are looking kind of cool, but they're not really showing us anything inside, which is, you know, kind of what I was hoping for. So let's turn off subsurface. I'm going to turn on refraction. And I might turn off the diffuse. So that's interesting. Let's go to opacity, turn on faux caustics. So what happens, oh, perhaps I need that on for the subsurface as well. Let's turn refractions off, go back to subsurface. No. Okay. So faux caustics is going to stop shadows from this object onto this internal thing. Kind of looks like a bag of teeth, which is slightly terrifying. So yeah, phocaustics basically gives you a control for how much shadow is going to be cast by this refractive object. And usually when you're doing water and things like that, you don't want shadow being cast, so you want to be able to turn the shadow off, or at least down. So you might want some shadow, but not a lot. So there we go. There's some kind of weird gooey stuff, and we can give that a color as well. So it doesn't have to be perfectly transparent. It could be kind of a bit red or bloody looking. And what'll be cool about that is that as these things poke through as well, they're a slightly different color. So we get that difference. Maybe the blend is a little off in terms of, you can see an intersection happening there, but that's not too bad. You can also play with the types of refraction. So we've got different refraction models. Translucency will give you a different result. Doesn't look that great. So you can play around with different ones for different purposes. They'll each give you a different kind of look. I think I'll just leave it on Fong. You could also try thin film. Thin film is actually really good when you want it to be perfectly transparent. So at the moment we have, without that turned on, we have like refraction happening. That's bending the light that's inside. So you can see how it sort of distorts the things inside. It acts like a lens. It's actually making it look bigger. You can also control that. Let's see, where are we? Under settings, this inside index of refraction setting, if I go higher, 1.6, that will actually bend the light more, and you'll see these things get more distorted the higher I go with that. It also affects the reflection. You can see that's actually changing the way the reflection is working too. So if I turn that off, we can see better the refractions. So the higher I go with this, the more kind of sort of distorted that interior will be. And that actually can work pretty cool for us. If I put this at very close to 1, you'll see it gives us like a very transparent result, which is, it still kind of looks cool, but I think having a really distorted result inside here actually makes it look even weirder, which is kind of what we're going for. So yeah, I quite like that. I think that's kind of cool. So let's go back. Now we could also add roughness. So our roughness will kind of make this like a frosted glass type effect. So, 1 will be completely rough. And that kind of actually looks a lot like the translucency refraction model. So maybe that's how that works. But sometimes a little bit of roughness can be good, although it does introduce noise. You can see how it sort of hazes out this stuff, which is kind of cool. But it does introduce a lot of noise. So that's something that you need to keep in mind. You can see without that, we don't have a lot of noise. You can also turn down the intensity. If you don't want it to be completely refractive, you could turn that down so that it's a lot darker and it doesn't refract as much. But I think I'll go intensity 1. You can also combine subsurface and refraction for a really kind of weird result. Let's see what taking that down does, if anything. Yeah, that's a bit too weird. I guess I don't have subsurface color. Let's try. See what that looks like. Yeah, it's a bit wacky. So I think I'll turn that off. Let's turn reflections on. I'll turn the roughness off because that's a bit weird. I want it to be super shiny. Let's try different reflection models as well. Can give you different results. Although you can see these other ones give you a noisier result. So that's kind of, always good to make sure that you choose one that doesn't give you a lot of noise. Maybe that's a little bit too reflective, so I'm going to turn the intensity down. Alright, so that's kind of, I don't know, it's not really what I was going for, but it's interesting looking. Let's see what it looks like at the start when it drops. Oh, that's cool. I like that. That looks weird. Nice. And you can see my render is going relatively quick. So and the settings are kind of okay. For a preview, like this is completely fine. And we're still kind of in the 8 seconds of frame realm. So this would render you know, really quickly as a sequence. So let's go and add some more layers to this effect now that we've got a basic lighting sort of setup going. So I'm going to turn off materials, and maybe actually I want to go back to my setup, and I'm going to take this peak down a bit. I want to see more of those things poking through. So I think that actually looks cooler with them poking through. So maybe I can just set it to 0 and see what that kind of looks like. I think, you know, whilst I don't like horror movies and super gory stuff, I really like working on that stuff. It is a lot of fun, kind of, you know, trying to make the grossest thing that you can in effects. I was watching, actually, on TV, John Wick 3 was on, and I did a whole bunch of like blood and brain kind of explosions for that, for research and development for that project. That was super gross. I had like shots of people's brain just like completely oozing out the back of their head after a shotgun blast, which was just really disgusting, but very kind of satisfying as an effect to work on. So yeah, it's, you know, it can be a lot of fun kind of trying to come up with these things. All right, so John Wick, but rated R. Yeah, that's right. I did this one shot where a guy gets stabbed in the eyeball with a knife, and he kind of cuts down from his eyeball down his cheek. But I think it was too gross for the rating, too kind of R-rated, I guess, and they reframed the shot so you couldn't see all of the grossness that I'd put into it, which was a little bit disappointing, but you know, it's good. I made it too gross. That makes me feel good. All right, I think this is rendering in the background again. It's always something you need to be careful of. Let me just hit escape, and it's probably a good idea for me to save this at this point because, you know, it may crash, and that would be bad. So let's call this goo ball. Goo ball. There we go. Yeah, I think, you know, I really enjoy when I get given these types of effects, like weird skin effects and weird kind of virus things. They are a lot of fun. All right, so there we go. That's kind of okay. So let's add something else. We're going to add now, remembering back to the reference that I'm kind of thinking in my head, there was like some kind of gross trail of stuff being left behind. So very simply, let's try and just take a grid, and if I subdivide this heavily, let's go more, let's go 200 by 200. There we go. And I'm just going to put a color, do my old attribute transfer, you know, my most commonly used effect or process in Houdini is the attribute transfer from color to get some sort of mask or something to drive something else. So from to, and you'll see, whoa, wait, that's weird. Color, I guess. Let's just, that, I think I was transferring normals then as well, which is why it looks so strange. So let's transfer color like this. There we go. And I'll just make this grid over this way a bit. So first of all, what I'm going to do is a kind of just super basic wet map type idea where I leave a trail behind this thing. So let's go and put down a SOP solver. Most kind of confusing thing when I first got into Houdini. I never understood how the solver worked, and I just, every time I had to look it up and try and figure it out all over again. But I feel like I understand it now. So from input to is the goo ball to previous frame. So the previous frame should, on the very first frame, bring in input 1 and just put it in the previous frame slot. Then I'm transferring red to it, and it's going to loop then every frame back onto itself. This will update as it goes, and then as this loops and updates, it will save that stuff onto it. So if I hit play, and it's just an additive kind of recursive effect. So if I hit play, and hopefully we'll see this trail build up over time. There we go. That's all just based on the motion, so it's going to take however long it takes. I might actually just, you can see this is accumulating quite a lot. So what I'm going to do is actually take the color down here. I'm going to make it not full red. I'm going to make it 0.5. And let's see if that does anything different. Oh, it's not, because I guess I'm not actually adding every frame this color. I'm just transferring it. So it's actually not adding to it, which I thought it might build up over time, but it's not. I could put that in there if I wanted to, but that's okay. Let's just go back to 1, doesn't matter. And I might just take the blend width down maybe. Let me have a look. Yeah, something like that. I just want to see a little bit more detail in here, make it feel a bit more interesting than a big red smear. There we go. That's a little bit more interesting. A few little different trails happening, just kind of cool. Feels a bit more creepy as well. All right. So what I'm going to do on this is scatter points. Let's see. Yeah, I'll scatter points over the whole thing. A lot of points. Turn off relax, because that's really slow operation on a lot of points. And let's go, what is that, 50,000, 500,000? That's probably enough. And then I'm going to blast based on the color. And the reason I'm not, say, using color as a CD value here is because that is going to make the points flicker every frame. You see how they're changing every frame? So instead of doing that, I'm going to just scatter points everywhere, which isn't particularly efficient, but it does make it so that I have constant points. So now I'm going to say at cd.x greater than 0, so that will then delete all the red ones. If I delete non-selected, then I get the red ones. There we go. So now I've got this kind of trail of points happening, and I can mesh it. So if I do a VDB to, or VDB from particles, I don't actually have a p-scale value on here, so I can just set one manually. Set the minimum radius to 0, control the voxel size. Oh, hey, Ivan, how you going? Thanks, welcome. Glad to see you here. Yeah, you can have a go at creating this. I'd love to see if anyone kind of takes this as inspiration, or have a look at that Rodeo Effects video and see if you can come up with something that's kind of similar. It's or just, you know, using that for inspiration. I think it's a really fun kind of thing to work on, because there's no kind of rules, there's no limits. It's just kind of, you know, just trying to, like I said, create layers of different objects and different effects and see what you can kind of come up with. So this is a little bit blocky at the moment, so I'm just gonna change my threshold here. You can see I'm capturing a lot of black as well, so I'm gonna just raise this to get rid of some of that black. So let's go something like that, maybe even more. There we go. And when we have a look at that on our goo ball, you can see now we're getting this kind of trail left behind. One cool thing that we could do as well is you can see that, hey, greetings from Peru. No worries. I'm going to pronounce it wrong, but I'll give it a go. Is it George or Jorge? I'm going to say George. Sorry for mispronouncing your name, but thank you for thanking me. That's very nice of you. So yeah, I'm gonna try and create a little blend here, because there's a disconnect at the moment. And it will kind of render okay, but it's always good if things kind of connect up. You know, this will feel a lot more kind of part of this effect if there's a bit of a junction happening. So one way that I could do that is to actually take my goo ball, convert it to polygons, and then we've got VDBs over here. Oh, yeah, we've got VDBs over here, VDBs over here. Let's make sure that they're the same resolution. 025 and VDB combine like that. And then if I do SDF union, let's say, and then convert, you can see how now I get this kind of blend happening. And if I was to use maybe a VDB smooth here, oh, there we go, you can see it already. You can see how that now blends into the kind of shape. And also the smoothing has done some nice things for shaping our trail. It's made it a lot kind of nicer and more goopy feeling. But now we'll see this kind of, you see how it really feels like it's laying that trail down now because it is connected to it? It feels like a fluid. But before, it was a little bit kind of just completely disconnected from it. But now it feels like it's part of it, which is great. So that's going to be, maybe this is going to be part of the whole goo ball render. The other thing that we could do is potentially blend to it to create the effect and then remove the goo ball from the effect so that we have this as a separate thing. So let's have a look at maybe how we could try that. We could do a VDB combine here with the same thing, and then instead of adding it again, we'll set it to like, let's try difference. I think we just want to do like one of these subtraction ones. Let's just try subtract. That gives us nothing. Let me just ISO value this a little bit, see if there's anything there. Oh, there's something there. There it is. So that gives you the kind of blend section, but with the whole thing removed, so that what you end up with, it's a little bit offset, which is a bit of a pain. What I might be able to do, let's see. I think it's one of these ones that I want. Let's try that. Might have to go a bit higher on our voxel size. Let me copy this, paste it over here. A bit more. Because these are so small, this kind of subtraction stuff might be a bit of an issue. And you can see the VDB smooth is actually smoothing a lot of that stuff away. So what might be a better idea is to actually make this a little bit larger. Oh, hey, David. Cool. That's great. You'll have to tell me what it is, or you can post a link to it in the comments, and I'll check it out. How did you go with the drool? I hope it worked out well for you. I'm glad that you used it. It's great. So let's try smoothing now. Oh, there we go. So we can see the smooth now doesn't completely remove everything. So maybe I can just dial that down until it works well. The other thing that you can do here with the smooth is to use this combination of VDB reshape nodes. So VDB reshape dilate, and after the smooth, VDB reshape erode. And this, it's like, well, you might say, well, how the hell did you come up with that? It's actually in the particle fluid surface node. If you have a look at the filtering, oh, cool, that's great, David. I'd love to see it. Put it, if it's if you're able to share it, put it in the comments, and I'll check it out after. Can't wait to see how you use the setup. So yeah, this method of dilating and then eroding is actually straight from the particle fluid surface node. You can see here, if I turn on dilate, it is linked to an erode, and in between those is a smooth. And what this does, and what we'll link these up as well, so copy parameter, reshape on the erode, paste relative reference. What this does is, as I increase the dilate, you see how it doesn't actually change the overall size of the the VDB, but it increases this blend amount, because what you're doing is sort of inflating everything. And when you inflate them, even without the smooth, when you inflate them and then dilate, erode them again, they get inflated, they stick together, and then when they pull back out with the erode, they're stuck together, so you get this blend between. So it's a really nice technique for increasing the blending amount between things. And then adding a smooth in there can just help make that a bit more, organic and increase it even further. So there we go, that's quite good. Let's have a look at the VDB combine now. Maybe if I swap these around, no, it's giving me nothing. Intersection, difference. Oh, difference kind of gives me almost what I want, although not totally. It's giving me that part is what I want, but this part is not great, and I think that's probably due to the dilating and eroding giving me a slight difference there. So one thing I could do is actually just dilate this a little bit on this stream, VDB, reshape, SDF. Let's just dilate that a little bit. You can see how that just pushes that stuff out. So if I just dilate that a little bit, we might end up with even less. There we go. It's getting slightly better. And just check when we merge it. There's a little bit of a offset there, but we could add a little ISO value. Oh, too much. This actually might be kind of cool to have as an additional layer as well. So maybe that is not completely working. So what I'm going to do here is just have this slime as well as this goo ball layer. So it's like an additional slimy layer over the top that also includes this trail. Let's just go with that, seeing as it's a difficult thing to achieve. I'm sure, I could probably figure it out eventually, but I don't want to, time is precious in these streams, so I don't want to spend too long figuring something out. I'm going to change this, maybe, mean value. Let's just push the radius up. There we go. It's very smooth now. Reshape. Convert, merge. Let's just make sure this is kind of a bit broader than the underneath goo balls, so I'm just going to offset this a little more. There we go. You do have to be careful when you offset. You can start to see these ridges appearing, which is the VDB resolution, I guess. Also, we're probably getting a little chunky down here, so maybe I've gone a bit crazy with that. Could always, I don't know, what could I do? I could always, I guess, dilate this here before meshing. Maybe that might kind of work as well. Yeah, that might do the job. All right, let's create another null, and we'll say out slime. Just copy this one. Oops. There we go, out slime. I might just give this another color so that it looks different to the other stuff. I'm not going to use the color, but just in the viewport, it might make it slightly easier to see. Oh. There's a visualizer for name on there for some reason. Okay. All right, let's check out our camera. Go back to our materials. Let's copy the goo shader. Call this one slime. And what have we got? We've got refractions turned on, fake caustics, reflection. Yeah, we don't have any diffuse. Let's apply that to the slime. Check it out. I'm not super keen on this goo ball shader, I think. I might want to go back and change that a little bit. Let's see. Maybe the bone stuff inside shouldn't have the subsurface and the goo ball should be more subsurfacey. But here we go. There we go. We've got some red slimy stuff happening. Let's maybe adjust our camera so we can see more of that now. Render view. And this one, I think, maybe I'll just make that kind of almost transparent. A little bit of pink value in there, so it's still kind of in the same world as this thing. There we go, we've got some slime happening. And yeah, let's, and so there's slime as well. If if we turn off these things, the slime is encasing this whole thing now as well. You can see we've got that. So we might also want to just, we might want to set that to thin film, so it's really transparent. Also, just make sure we've got folk caustics turned on so it doesn't cast any shadows. And let's turn our goo ball on. So we've got that. Let's give the goo ball the chunks shader and see what that looks like. And maybe these bony bits inside I'll give a different shader again. Oh, that's kind of weird. Let me have a look. Let's go scatter distance. We'll up this now because this is a much larger thing, so we might just want more scattering going on it. Oh, there we go. So let's now give our chunks a different shader. So we'll turn those back on. And I'm just going to give them, I'll go a new classic shader on those. We'll call this chunks. Oops. Solid. And here we go. I'd love to see a shadow from those inside this thing, but I am not seeing that at the moment, which kind of bothers me. I don't know why I'm not seeing that. I don't think it's because I did this masking thing. Where did I do that? Chunks themselves. No. I did it on the grid. Environment light. I wonder why. It's almost like a bit of SSS on that thing. Yeah, that's right. Yeah. What I was saying earlier, David, is that I prefer using the classic shader for SSS effects because I just don't get the same results with the principled shader. So I much prefer using the old classic shader. It's just a lot easier to get SSS stuff happening. But yeah, what I'm trying to figure out now is why I'm not getting, like, I can't really see the chunks inside, because really what I should see, if I turn this off, is I should see some kind of shadows coming from this stuff. Let me turn off that. Turn on my goo ball again. I guess maybe I am, but yeah, I'm not really feeling that internal kind of stuff happening there. So let's have a look and try and figure out why we might not be getting those. Chunk solid, diffuse. So it's the goo. Actually, it's the goo ball has the chunks shader on it. So let's take a look at the chunks shader. I wonder if it's got anything to do with my multiplier here that I added. No, doesn't seem to make any difference. Opacity, faux caustics, shadow opacity 1, doesn't seem to make a difference either. I wonder if I do this, where I take my chunk geometry and I merge it with the goo ball and merge them together. I wonder if that will do anything. Ah, there we go. See, now I'm getting those shadows in there. This is kind of what I was expecting before. Yeah, and now you can see them kind of inside the object. So that's, yeah, that's kind of interesting. So I've got both now. I've got the chunks actually show up on the outside, but now I can see these shadows in there as well. So that's, yeah, it's a good thing to know. I think I have came to that same conclusion once before, that I had to do that, but I had forgotten that they need to be as part of the same object. So let's go and tweak the settings now. Turn that down a little bit. yeah, now you can see that we see those shadows in there, and it looks a bit better. Let's turn it up. I'll turn off faux caustics. Don't know if that's making any difference to anything. No. Take that diffuse intensity up a little bit. Let's try turning on refraction a tiny bit. See what that gives us. Maybe like a rough refraction. Whoa, super noisy. Okay, let's not do that. Just a little bit of refraction can sometimes give you like little interesting details. Not always. Also, changing the light will give me a different, you know, result as well. As we saw before, if I up this, I'll get a brighter kind of look to this stuff. But also potentially changing the angle, you know, could work as well. If we have a look through the light. It's actually directly behind the camera now. So I could try moving it around like that and just seeing what that gives me. It's all just, you know, it's a bit of trial and error at this stage. Just trying to see, you know, what different lighting angles give you different results. Oh, that's kind of interesting. We're getting a bit more sort of surface stuff happening. Let's turn the chunks back on, and I'm going to give them a light kind of color. So we should see them. I don't know, it's hard to tell. Let me just make them pink so I can see if they're on. Goo ball. Oh, there they are. I guess there's none poking out at the moment. Oh, there they are. Stupid interactive renderer wasn't showing the update correctly when I turned them on. That's the frequent thing that happens, is when you add an object to the interactive renderer, it doesn't update. So that's a good case to hit stop and render again. Turn reflection on, roughness down. We could add subsurface if, you know, if we wanted to go completely crazy subsurface everywhere. Hey, no worries, David. Yeah, cool. I look forward to watching your short. Thanks for joining me. I know you'll catch the rest of the stream when you can. But good to see you again. And no problem. Anytime. If you ever have any questions, you know, feel free to come on and ask. All right. So that was giving me weird results because it was set to full scattering, which is why I don't use full scattering, because it just doesn't give me straightforward kind of scattering results. Maybe for really complicated scenarios that is what you want, but cool. Take it easy, David. Thanks for joining me. Yeah, maybe for really sort of realistic or complex results you want full scattering, but I find single scattering is, you know, the thing that I use more than anything. All right, so that's kind of cool. Let's go back and turn on our slime layer. There we go. And that gives us the reflection on top of everything, which is really nice. And it will tie everything all together with this slime that connects it to the ground and leaves trail behind. We can make sure that we've got our shadow opacity set to 0, so it's not casting any shadows. It's potentially going through the ground, which when you have a wet nap or something like that, potentially doesn't look realistic. So let's just go and take a look at that. And you can see there, it's going through the ground. So I'm going to just, probably should do it in the setup here. I'm going to just flatten this stuff off, and I'm going to use a wrangle to do it. I'm just going to say at, let's go if at p.y. It's actually a very similar wrangle to what I did in this, in the solver before. If at p.y is less than 0, at p.y equals 0. And what that does is just clamps anything that is below 0 to the ground. You can see that there? And if we have a look at what effect that has on the render, let's take a look. Render. Well, I think we're having an intersection happening now, but let's just raise this up a little bit. P dot 0.01. Go a little bit higher. Oh, well, it's not having the dramatic effect that I was hoping for. In fact, it seems like it's casting shadows, which it shouldn't be. It may just be the darkness of my environment light that is causing that. Weird. Let's just check our material. So we've got settings. Maybe it's the index of refraction that's causing it. Let's set that to 1.1. I've got thin film turned on, which doesn't really make too much difference. Let's see. It could be this as well. Yeah, weird. And do we have diffuse? We don't have diffuse turned on. Let's turn off reflections for a second. So yeah, it's kind of, it's not totally what I would have expected. In that it's darkening the ground down. And I was kind of hoping that by raising that up a little bit, so it's not intersecting the ground, that it would look pretty transparent when I had it on top. But it's not, which is odd. So let's just check. We could try a principled shader and see if that gives us any different result, because this one doesn't have subsurface, so... ooh, that's weird. Okay, let's just turn off use point color. We'll set the base color to black, and we'll turn on reflectivity 1. And you can see it gives us black, so we still need to do the fake caustics. Oh, interesting. Surface, set roughness to 0, reflect. Oh, transparency. I think I turned on the wrong thing. It gives us the same result. So I guess that's just what we're getting with the lighting. I don't know why it's darkening so much, but yeah, I don't know. Let's switch back to slime, so it's easier to control. Faux caustic. So if I turn this up, it gets darker. But I thought at 0 it should kind of give me pretty well nothing, but I guess not. Turn this up a bit. Thin film. In any case, that technique for clamping is really handy. You know, you tend not to want stuff to go through the ground plane like that. So, oh, that's maybe, yeah, we should take that back down to 0. Yeah, you know, and it also creates a better kind of junction when you render. You can also add a smooth to this, and that should potentially just pull those edges up a little bit, and that will kind of just create a little lip, which will look good on a render as well. Let's have a look at that. Might not be super noticeable from this camera angle, but it's always good to have little edges. Like, you know, it's why we put bevels on things as well, is because bevels and edges catch light. And it's that kind of little detail. Well, that's an interesting result. It's that little detail, that little edge detail, which can look, you know, really good. I don't know what the hell is going on there. I think maybe the normals are a bit weird. Yeah. Let me put a facet down. Always faceting. Stop. Render. Oh, wait. Did I? No, I don't have that turned on. I thought maybe I had duplicated things. Nice and gooey. Yeah, that's right. Oh, that's pretty weird. I don't know why that's giving me such a odd result. I guess maybe I'll turn constrained boundary off. Maybe that was doing some weird stuff. No? I guess maybe the thin film refraction. Well, there you go. You never know when you're going to hit some sort of weird thing in Houdini, but it happens quite frequently. It may just be a scale thing that is happening there with the refractions. I don't know. It's really odd. I bet if I take off my my p.y thing, it may go away. Yeah. I think what's probably happening is that it's, and this is why I raised it up slightly before, is that it's touching the ground plane and there's actually some intersections going on. I think that is probably what's going on there. So if I raise this up ever so slightly, we'll probably see those go away. There we go. I'll just check, make sure that that isn't too aggressive, that raise. It's refracting its own intersection. Yeah, that's right. It's probably like there's a shadow or something happening, and it's also refracting that cut through the ground plane and the geometry. But this isn't quite working, this little cull here, so I think what I should do is say I should make these the same. So if less than, and then it will flatten to that level. Otherwise it was raising it above some other stuff. So let's check about that. Just hit stop, render, make sure it's got that latest result. And we could actually turn off that ray as well that I've got in there. Yeah, that is what's pushing this goo ball out. We could turn it off or down. That might be interesting. So there we go, that's all fixed now, that's good. So, you know, if you remember, and for the people that weren't here at the start, if we had, we've got this point deform here that is turning our RBD sim into a ball of goo. So that's our original RBD sim, creeping along with the wind. And we've got that, and then I raid that back onto the RBDs to get it to push out. But maybe it's better if they're not sort of completely doing that. Like maybe we only do this a little bit, just scale it up like that a little bit, and then we have those pieces kind of poking out. So if we have a look all the way down the end here, it's recalculating the solver as well, because that's all based on everything that was before. So now we've got these kind of poking out through, and that might be yeah, that's right. He's a little pet slime ball, pet goo ball. My pet goo ball. Sounds like a cartoon from the 80s. Yeah, so maybe having these peek out a little more makes it feel a bit more interesting, and that will give us a bit more of a textural difference, because at the moment this subsurface is kind of everywhere. And then maybe I need to change the shader on my chunks as well so they stand out a little more. But let's see what that looks like. Just creeping away. There we go. So there is this kind of difference between here, but you can see they basically have the same shader. So let's just go and let's make sure, what have we got here? Chunks solid. So we could up the scatter distance, so it gives us a different result on that. Hit stop, render again. I think that's not updating. Come on, you can do it. Oh, you know what? I know why. Because we're merging those into the goo ball as well, and rendering them with subsurface. So that's not going to work exactly. Let's see. What can we do? Let's do this. We'll boolean. Oh, last time I did boolean on this stream, things didn't go so well. So I might just. I think this will be fine, but let's just see. Every time I use boolean, I cross my fingers and hope for the best, but you never know. This is pretty light, so it should be fine. So, well, that's kind of interesting. That's not what I was going for. But but it's kind of cool. Let's see. What am I going for? I want actually the opposite of that. So I think I want intersect. There we go. So that these are just going to live inside the goo ball. They're not going to poke through anymore. So you can see if I turn that off, that just makes those geometries stay inside. So that will be good for the shading of this thing. And of course it was rendering the whole time underneath. So that will be good for the shading of this thing, getting those shadows coming through inside. But then when I get my chunks on there, now we can see those. There we go. Oh, and they're looking very weird. Now we can see those poking through, and there's a difference. So that's good. But that shader is quite odd. So let's turn that down. Yeah, look like I don't know, moonstone or something, some weird. And that's the cool thing with subsurface. Just, you know, as an aside, that when you give a color like that strong yellow color there, you don't just get yellow. You get the opposite as well of the spectrum. You can see here is yellow, and then on the direct opposite side, the way that the light is scattering, it actually gives you blue. And you'll see if I change that to green, I get pink. So it actually gives you the direct opposite on the color wheel, which is a really interesting effect, and you can get some crazy kind of stuff with it. And if you play with the scattering phase as well, that can sort of change the way that behaves. You can see it's getting more noisy as well, which is a bit of an issue. But you can see as I push that scattering phase towards positive, I get more red. And as I push it towards negative, I get more of that blue. And it does then become noisy. But you can kind of control that if you want to, if you want it either more of the opposite color or less, you can sort of control that. So you can definitely create some really, kind of interesting results by doing that and playing with the phase. So you can see as I do that, I get also a darkness happening, and that would be because this is not completely actually it doesn't seem to make a difference. I think as I take that saturation down, that will become more intense. That actually looks really cool. Let's see what that looks like. Maybe it'll look a bit weird. A bit of black. Let's put the slime over the top of everything, get everything kind of playing together. We can also inflate this slime value as well. Just, let's go back to our setup and just maybe make this a bit blobbier overall. So this one here, let's go and peak that out a little more. Maybe. Getting a bit of stuff there. Oh, there we go. Smoothed out. That's good. Let's check out the render view. I'm hoping just peaking it out will give us a bit more sort of refraction stuff. Peak is an inflation. Yeah, peak basically just, it adds value based on the normals. So it's like a normal offset. So it will offset the surface based on the normals. So you always need to have normals for a peak to work. It is the same as doing a, adding N to P in a VOP or in a Wrangle. But it's just a nice, easy, wrapped up version of that. Yeah, it's just a little offset, a little displacement to the mesh based on the normals. Some weird reflections going on here from our little chunks, but I don't know if this black is kind of working, but it's weird, so that's good. Let's go back to our start and see what that kind of looks like. Starting to resemble, I don't know what, some sort of food or something now. Maybe it is your lunch, Audrey. I guess this is the cool thing about, these, just setting up things like this, these shaders and these workflows is obsidian shards and custard. Yeah, that's right. That's right. Delicious. Me too. Can't wait. yeah, the cool thing is, I've got this kind of set up with all these shaders now, and I can just really play with some of these ideas and these things, and just see kind of what happens. We'll see if we can get a render happening, and see if we can get something rendered out. Breakfast of Champions, that's right. Um, let's have a go at rendering it. So I'm gonna just override camera resolution, set it to half res, so we get a super quick render. I don't know if setting it to PBR will make any difference. Ray tracing, I think, is probably fine for this. My goal is just to get something really quick. And I could also just make the grid not render, and that will save me some render time as well. So I'll put it in forced matte instead of forced objects. And so let me just pick everything here, but actually just slime, gooball, and chunks. Accept. Now the grid is gone, so it doesn't render that, but it doesn't affect the look of my render, which is good. So there we go, 4 seconds. Let's just see where I can start this render from. So it's going to take a little bit of time to render just because of the cooking time. You can see that cook time is a little bit slow, so that will add to the render time. So it's always good to cache this stuff to disk. It's probably what I would do in reality. Let's go and just render this from frame 19. Let's see. Another thing actually that is really useful when I'm doing these things, and I want to turn around a render very quickly. So we're going to render to 19 to, let's say 120. I think that by that time is kind of almost off the screen. Oh no, maybe a little more. 190. It's doing its dop cook of the solver. Probably the RBDs as well. So there we go. That'll be all right. Let's go 190. Now, it's not going to be a perfect render. Obviously, it's low noise, low size. And now I'm also going to render only every second frame. So if I pop open my trusty calculator and do 190 minus 19, I probably could have worked that out, 171. If I divide that by 2, I'm now only rendering, well, it won't give me a half frame, but I'm now only rendering 85 or 86 frames. Is this rendering on the same machine as the stream? Yes, it will. Hopefully it doesn't cause any problems. I'm going to hit save, and I'm just going to hit render to disk in background, so it's not rendering in the same process. But hopefully that will render. Let's see. Oh, there we go. Open scheduler, and you can see all my previous renders that have taken place. Clear completed, and now I can watch this go. So this is not, it's not a very intensive render. You can see I'm not using, I'm only using around half of my render, and you'll see my CPUs go. But yeah, now I'm rendering every second frame. I'm rendering half the amount of frames, but it will give me a good idea of the overall duration and the overall sequence. So when I'm just previewing stuff like this, it's a lot faster to just render every second frame. I don't need to see every frame necessarily. I just want to assess, maybe not the timing, because that would be harder to assess on every second frame, but I can assess the rendering during the course of the animation. Even rendering every 5th frame or 10th frame is a good way to assess how things are changing over the length of a shot. So quite frequently what we'll do in production, on film, is we send something to the render farm. We might not get back that render for a few hours, depending on how busy the render farm is. But we might, we'll submit a job, and at Method anyway, where I've worked most recently, we submit 2 jobs. One is a preview frames job, and then dependent on that is the rest of the frames. And the preview frames just gives you every 10th frame, let's say, or every 25th frame. If the job is 100 frames long, maybe it gives you 0, 25, 50, 75, 100, something like that. And then from those preview frames, you can go, actually, something's not working from frame 50 onwards, because on frame 50, 75, and 100, I'm not seeing anything. It's all black. So something's broken. Cancel my job. There's no point rendering 100 frames of something that doesn't work. You're taking the resource away from someone else. So it's really good to have those preview frames. And I practice it at home as well. And I just want to preview something and just make sure that my render is is working for the entire duration. I will do preview frames. I might do them manually. I might go and check frame 125 by myself in the render view and then go, yep, that's fine. Render all the frames. Or I might just render, every second frame and, go and make a cup of coffee and come back, and hopefully, then I can assess if I need to make any changes, address certain things that are happening at certain times. Maybe I need to animate my shader for some reason, so I can work all that stuff out. But I'll be waiting twice as long, if not longer, if I render all the frames. And certainly, I keep saying this to lots of people, but rendering half res, is always a good idea when you're testing this stuff and trying to come up with workflows and testing shaders and stuff like that. It's all just half res until you have decided that it's fine, and then you can render it at full res. There's no need at all to render at full res when you're just testing stuff. Unless it's very fine detail, quite often you just get very little benefit from rendering at full res. So I'm just going to pull this up now in here and see where we're up to. There we go. And you can see that it's flickering like this because every second frame is missing. So I don't actually remember how to do this in here, but let's have a look and see if we have any settings for this. Let me see. Render anim. I thought there was a setting for that, but maybe not. 24. What if I set it to... Actually, I don't think that will work, but... No, it's still going to flicker. In Nuke, which is where I would probably bring these in, or into a different image viewer than mplay, it will actually hold on the frames that are missing. So it doesn't... It's less of an issue. In fact, I can just bring that into Nuke and just have a look. Let's see. Yeah, so it's a little bit hard to judge on here, but you can see I'm getting a good idea of how this is rendering, and it's happening pretty quickly because I'm only rendering every second frame. And because this thing isn't moving very quickly as well, that's another thing probably that would influence my choice of how many frames I render. If something's moving really quickly and changing a lot every 5 frames, say, then maybe I need to change the interval of how many frames I'm rendering. So let's have a look. Hopefully my Nuke is still going to work. Let's have a look. Here we go. So here's Nuke, and let's just drag it in and find it. Gooball, where are you? There. Okay, so we'll drag that in, and we can set the missing frames to nearest frame. Just make sure I pick the full sequence. You can see what's happening here, 43, 45, 47, etc. When I hit play in here, you can see that it's showing me, it's just holding. So every second frame is going to be the same as the frame before it. So you can see as I step through, it's just holding the frame. And that's great because it allows me then to preview. But you can see, like looking at that, it's very hard to even perceive that there's only every second frame being rendered there. So it's a perfect way to preview this thing very quickly. It's no need to have every first frame there, or every frame. And we can get a good idea of how this kind of motion is working, and what's kind of going on with this thing. I think other things that might be nice to do are little strands that are kind of connecting things together. You wonder, I wonder if Resolve can do that. Probably. I wouldn't be surprised if there was some way of holding missing frames. It's pretty common, I think. It would be interesting to see if Resolve can do it. It's definitely very handy for this sort of thing. Also, rendering just every second frame is a technique of making something, or maybe not even every second frame, every fifth frame, let's say. There's potentially a technique for making something look a bit more like stop motion as well. So there are interesting techniques you can try with only rendering or only animating every second frame or something like that. They're definitely, well, you'd know all about that, Adam, with your animation background. But yeah, I think you can get different results by changing the way that you're kind of animating, or the way that you're rendering even gives different looks. Might make something look, anime is typically 4s or 6s. Yeah, feature 2D is 2s. I guess feature 2D is 2s. Does that make it just feel smoother? Is that why? Or is there some other reason why they choose to do 2s? And do you ever do 1s? Or is that just crazy? Is there no need to do 1s? So we're starting to get a good idea of what this looks like. Let's just see where we're up to. 75. So we're getting there. I'm going to set this to input now, and it will update to the 24 frames per second. We usually do 2s and occasionally 1s. Yeah. Is it because it's smoother? Is that why, like, compared to anime? Or is that just a stylistic choice for anime that they do 4s or 6s? I imagine it's budgetary, but perhaps it is a style. So I think, the motion of this thing could be improved. I obviously did a pretty basic motion on this thing with just a pulsing wind happening. So we could certainly give them maybe a more interesting dynamic kind of behavior. Maybe each piece has a slightly different value to it as well. That could be an interesting thing to try, is to vary, maybe vary that wind or vary that pulsing so that it's not so constant. Maybe even some kind of like caterpillar type behavior would be interesting, where it sort of stretches out and then the tail kind of comes up. It behaves a bit more like a worm or something. Might be kind of cool. But it's meant to be a weird kind of thing, so I think this is kind of 1s is for fast or smoother movement. Yeah, definitely budgetary. Eyes perceive 2s as very smooth. Yeah, that's right. And I mean, that's evident here, where you can see that it's kind of hard to tell that there's only every second frame being rendered here. So yeah, I think, and that's why we arrive at 24 frames per second as well, because eyes, the eyes don't really perceive much greater than that. So yeah, I think it's quite interesting. I don't do it enough, actually. I think I will do it more, because it really is fine for previews. At least it's more than okay. Maybe once you make it HD and everything becomes a little bit clearer, it might be more noticeable. But and maybe it is based on the motion as well. That certainly would have an impact. Sometimes in 2s we deliberately pull back to. Sometimes in 2D we deliberately pull back to 2s because 1s is too digital. Yeah, that's right. Too clean, too smooth feeling. I don't know if you guys feel the same way, but I cannot watch TVs that have motion interpolation turned on. Like they call it sports mode in some TVs, and it just drives me crazy. I I cannot physically stand to watch something that has that motion interpolation turned on because it looks completely unnatural. It just, yeah, it really bothers me. What bothers me even more is that people that have it turned on their TVs and don't care about it or don't even really realize that it feels weird, which it's just like, how can you not see what I see? But I guess it's just, you know, when you're into this stuff and when you've been sort of, I guess, trained to see things in a certain way, maybe it's more noticeable to you. I felt the same way when I watched The Hobbit at 60 frames per second. Everything looked double timed to me. It looked like it was in fast motion, which was just really, really distracting, and I couldn't concentrate on it. Yeah, so well, some TVs you can't turn it off, Pierre. I found one TV where I was just like, it was the first thing I looked for to try and turn it off, and I couldn't, and I was just like, well, I guess I'm not watching TV because it's just painful. We went to a screening once of when we finished a Game of Thrones episode at Method, and it was at a bar, and the TV, because it was a sports, like I guess they usually play sports, so maybe it's better for sports, but it had it turned on, and I was just like, I couldn't watch. It was just like, it's so annoying. Anyway, I'm glad to hear that's not just me, though. Really, really, I don't know. I really react to it for some reason. But, you know, working in this industry, I have kind of, you know, I'm very sort of attuned to problems and errors with things, so it makes sense that I would pick up things like that, because that's what I kind of do. Oh, look, there's some weird stuff happening at the end, so I'm glad I didn't render all these frames and then realize that, you know, I'd wasted all that time. There's something weird happening there, and I bet what's going on there is a problem with our Boolean, because Boolean cannot be trusted. So you can see there on frame 95, I guess it's either 95 or 90. Yeah, it must be 95. That, if we go to it, let's jump to frame 95. So what we should see if we go to 95 is that this goo will jump. Maybe. Let's have a look. Goo ball. Yeah, there it is. So if we go back one frame. Oh no, let's have a look. So yeah, this is not working. Let's have a look here. So annoying, the display on the Boolean, you can't really see what's going on. So got that, and that should be clipping out. So Boolean's just kind of failing, or maybe it's not. Maybe it's just hard to tell. Oh no, I think it is working. Yeah. Okay, so on 95, for some reason. Yeah, it's not working on 95. Who knows why? I bet, probably, there may be some problem with this mesh on 95. And, you know, I see things like this little fold here, and there may be intersecting geometry. Yes, there is. So that would potentially cause a problem with Boolean. And even here, yeah, if I go inside, I can see all these little issues with this mesh. And that's, yeah, that's one of the issues with Boolean, is that it can't accept things like that, and it will fail. So perhaps the better option here would be to maybe convert these to VDBs, or convert this, so VDB from polygons on this. That will get rid of, obviously, any polygons, so there's not going to be any more intersecting or manifold faces facing the wrong way, or, you know, doing all sorts of weird stuff. So if I then convert that back to a polygon and run that through the Boolean, then that should again work, because we no longer have anything intersecting. We just have this nice clean mesh. So that could be a good option there. And that's only doing it for the, it's just being used for this subtraction. So it's not actually affecting our final mesh. So that should be fine. As long as there's no kind of like disconnect. There may be a little disconnect there, which might cause some weirdness. So we just need to kind of make sure that that, I guess, was all kind of worked out. Maybe just creating an offset like that, or maybe the other way. I don't know which way it should be. Maybe something like that. Inwards. There we go. And all this is for is just for shadows, so it doesn't have to be perfect. But maybe that will work better. So yeah, it's a good thing I didn't render all those frames and got to the end and I was like, oh man, there's so many problems. But the other flip side of that is that potentially I wouldn't have picked up those errors if I rendered on 5s or if I rendered every 10th frame. I would have to be very lucky to catch that. So rendering 2s in this instance was a good thing. There we go. So, those errors aside, we've got our weird little pulsing custard monster with black teeth or obsidian inside. That would actually be really, really creepy if those were teeth models. So we could potentially swap that out, which would be just horrible. But, the goo, I think, we're not getting a lot of value out of it at the moment. So potentially, one thing that we could do there is just change the way that that's being created, or the slime, I should say. I mean, it's the camera angle as well that's kind of obscuring that creation, but I think, we could go all the way back up to the solver here and just spread that out a little more. If we go in here, maybe just making that slightly larger. What are we at? 0.7. Let's go 0.9. So, something like that maybe. And then this is a pretty static kind of slime. So I think probably what I might want to do as well at another point, I mean, maybe next week I can keep working on this if people are interested, but, perhaps just adding a bit of dynamic stuff to this. This is all just very static at the moment, although we're trying to do things to make it feel a little bit more interactive and dynamic by changing the way that I'm meshing this to make it feel like it's more a part of the creature. But still, it's a static kind of thing that's being left behind. So perhaps adding flip or adding some other little elements might be interesting. Changing the angle, certainly might help though. But it's a very kind of, just snail trail at the moment. So let's just have a look, see if we've got any more frames. And I'm out of time, so I'm going to have to go. But I hope you guys found this interesting. And we can definitely keep working on it and try out some different ideas next week. It's a good thing to sort of play around with. We could add particles to this, we could add flip, we could add vellum. There are lots of different things that you could add to something like this to make it a more kind of crazy creature, and just increasing the level of detail and adding little features like little strings or little tendons. No worries, Audrey. Hey, thanks, Adam. Thanks for joining me. Well, I'll see you guys next week if you come along. If not, have a great week and enjoy, playing around in Houdini. And if you like the stream, then make sure you hit like and subscribe so that you get notified. I am here every Monday. And there's lots of other good content on our channel. So if you're interested in other aspects of, art creation, 3D, computer graphics, please check it out. And if you're interested in learning this stuff, then, head over to the CG Spectrum website and have a look at the courses that we offer. So, thanks for joining me, everybody. I hope you enjoyed seeing my gross sphere creature come to life. And have a great week. See you guys.